Welcome back to The Wow Within. I'm Jen Potter and I'm your host. We believe that every writer and author has a story to tell, and there is something big behind their story. Today, I'm joined by Susan Drayton, who is the author of 2 books and currently working on her third. Thank you so much for joining us today, Susan.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I adore you and I love having you on the show. And for those of you who do not know Susan, she is an artist local to Massachusetts, and she has all different types of mediums that she creates on, whether it's with paint or whether it's with her words. And both the canvas and the book, you have an incredible way of telling a story. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I would love to just start talking about your journey as a writer and your first book. So your first book is called Worthiness. And with that book, there's a big message behind it. What was the motivation for starting that book particularly?
Well, I wasn't planning on writing a book, but the fact that I was going through some life-changing, altering decisions that I didn't want to face because it was making me become an adult, and I didn't want to adult. But
Peter Pan syndrome.
Yes. So I escaped into my art, and it started off with all the imageries of it. And it was just my escape to deal with my emotions and how I wanted to present myself in this situation, because I could have given in to my ego and just been really selfish, really doing a disservice to myself. And that's not what I wanted. So as time went on, I was just illustrating, and then I had to do something, and all of a sudden I had all these illustrations, and then I started writing, which was never my forte, if you will. It just happened.
Right.
So, and then my mentor was like, what are you going to do with this now? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just doing it for therapeutic reasons. And she's like, well, at that time I was going through a divorce. And so I was like, well, I can actually go on a trip somewhere, or I can publish a book. So I decided to publish the book, and it's called Worthiness, published
I love
by
it.
Mascot Books. And it's about Seth, who's a dragon, and he knows he's this beautiful, colorful dragon, but he's not sure of anything else. And so with the influence of Amaryllis, who is the fairy, as well as the fairy kingdom and Mother Earth, things start to change. Perspectives start to become different and more clear as to how to navigate in his dragon life. So he had to learn a lot about himself along the way of his journey. And he had a decision to make. Are you worthy? Are you more than just this moment and this hiccup that you're going through? So he has to make a decision to either stay where he's at or embrace the new him. And it's usually the unknown, because it's a clean slate that you most likely are going to have to cultivate. And sometimes you're still in the wounds of the old pain, suffering from the old, and yet you got one foot dipping in the new, but you're not sure how this is going to play out. So yeah, this
Right.
is more in basic to the audience of elementary level, but in actuality, you can identify yourself in this story no matter what age you are and where you've been.
Yes.
But
And
it's
I was feeling that, like you're
Mhm.
going through that and you're talking about how you wrote it when you're going through divorce. And I was like, this is you starting a different chapter of your life. And
Yeah.
I could really feel that when you were saying it, and hearing you just talk about, this dragon who's trying to find their identity. And now when you go through that process, and this book is so relatable on so many age levels, and it's
It
beautiful.
it is. And the thing was, I wasn't like expecting to publish a book or anything. And I'm one that I don't mind commitments, but sometimes you can lose your independence in those commitments.
Oh,
And that's what I've learned as reflecting on Seth, was that I did lose my independence because I started taking on different identities of I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to be the chauffeur, I got to be the mom, I got to be that
mhm.
cheerleader, the nurse, the this and every other thing in between, that my desires were being put in the back burner. So it created not a good environment for me. So I had to do something, but little did I know, I believed that divine was actually nudging me in a whole other direction, and did it very softly. And I mean, it had its hiccups, but it was nothing that I couldn't endure. And I understood that it was just temporarily. And I surrounded myself with a bunch of Amarellises. And then I started, as well as cultivating new friendships that were more healthier and that wanted to see me succeed. And then, my meditations started to grow more, and my Reiki practices started to come in, which I didn't even know I wanted to do that. It just slowly all started to turn around. And it was just beautiful, coming from a
Right.
sad place. Something beautiful got transmuted into the light. And this was my light,
But
you know.
that's the amazing part, right? So you're writing this book for yourself, but at the same time, you're helping other people go through their journey.
Yeah.
And, part of growth and evolution is to continue to grow, to continue to evolve as people, as yourself. If we were to stay stagnant, we
Hmm.
would never grow. And so you were teaching yourself lessons probably, and you didn't even know it, right? You said you were using it
Hmm.
as therapy. And so as you get through the book, and like you said, it's geared towards like that school age level, but even as an adult who reads this story, we feel so connected, because even in my 40s, I went through the who am I phase,
Hmm.
and what is my purpose, and I wasn't fully aligned. And so when you tell this story, it pulls at my heartstrings. And it's beautiful, because it's like, okay, who am I? What is my purpose? Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? And I love that about this story. So as you kind of get through the book and you're telling the story, what is the overall problem that it solved? So if what are you trying to teach our audience as they kind of go through this?
That your light is not dim, even though, you're surrounded at the time with negativity and these illusions of, or situations of, oh my God, it's not going to get any better. Sometimes you need to just take those small steps and align with yourself. And being a child, it's hard. So I would say the basics is, what are your happy thoughts? Where is your happy place? What brings you joy? And stick with that feeling and grow from there. And just the surrounding with, better people, better situations. And you know what? For me, it wasn't just friends, it was also family members that I had to just be like, you know what, we're not on the same page, and that's okay. But
Hmm.
I didn't, it was daunting leaving the past, the comfort zone that and then at the same time it's like you're excited for the new, but it's like, okay, what is this supposed to look like? Because
Right,
it's like,
because it's the fear of the unknown. We don't
yeah,
know
the
what's on the other
unknown.
side of the door, right?
Exactly.
And
No training wheels. Nobody's there to
right,
guide you other than your intuition. And you
right.
better get to know yourself really well. And that is sometimes very hard, to look at
Yes.
the parts that is still healing or haven't been healed. So it's been neglected and it looks kind of ugly at times, but you got to embrace the whole you, and you got to do it slowly in the present moment. And I didn't learn that till later on in my life.
Right.
But that's okay because I still chose to make that decision to want better, be better, and
Right.
achieve better, whatever that means to the individual. And I know for me, it's through the arts. And that's where I can be me and not feel so judged harshly. But even if I am, it's okay.
Right.
It's teaching me to you know, just trust and just grow and just become whatever that looks like it is. And it will be.
And that's the beautiful part. And I'm a firm believer that you are exactly where you're supposed to be at all moments in
Hmm.
time. And the lesson that you're teaching is a lesson that we didn't learn till we were a lot older. And
Hmm.
I think this book being geared towards the younger generation is just you giving insight to trust your instincts at a younger age. Listen to yourself, right? Like if I listened to myself in my 20s, I think I'd be a completely different person, and
Mm.
or even in my 30s. And so, the fact that you have really said, hey, I'm going to direct this towards the younger generation, I think it gives our kids more confidence. As a mom, when I present these things to my children now, I can only hope that when they're my age, they're in a different place and their mentality is different and they're more educated, and they learn to trust themselves. And I think when you boil it down, right, a lot of stuff that you do has a lot to do with animals and instincts, and
Hmm.
I look at that, and our animal instinct is to trust them, and we don't. As humans, we fight them all the time. And when you start to trust your instincts and trust that gut feeling, I feel like my whole life changed. And I know that that happened with you too. And so it's a beautiful thing. And,
Yeah.
you know, it really is. And, is there anything else with this book that you would love to tell our audience about before we go to our next break? And then when we come back, we're going to also talk about the other two books that you have.
Well, you're going to love the illustrations. It's very vintage.
I love
And
that.
it's a book that no matter where you are in your life, if you're a child, a young adult, older, you can always refer back because, as we all know, life is up and down, which it
Yep.
should be like a wave. But sometimes we need that reassurance. And this book, I believe, it's a great resource that you can have for a lifetime and pass it on to generations. And I, for one, as a child, I was never heard. I was just seen.
Hmm.
And so felt invisible a lot of my childhood. And now I think I'm being seen now and making up for all the old. And yeah, this is a book that will always
I love
be
that.
giving the true essence of bringing you back to the authentic self, if you so desire to choose that.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's, I knew that this book has existed for some time, and I almost feel like I've done a disservice by not reading it. And so I do look forward to reading this book and actually having Grace read it. I think my kids are going to love it. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for telling us about this book. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other books that we're working on. So stay tuned.